Welcome to ERTT Radio. I'm your host, Mike. Thanks for joining us. Well, everyone's getting ready for Christmas, coming up in a few weeks. If you're like most Americans, probably waiting to the last minute to do your shopping. I wish I could say all my shopping was done at this point in time, but it's not. We actually went out, me and the family, and went out and got our Christmas tree today. So, getting really excited, putting everything together, decorating the tree. I know the kids are really excited. And hopefully you avoided the mad rush during the Black Friday events. I think it's kind of sad that YouTube is the best place to look for all the pretty much violent crimes that end up going on Black Friday. Just people trying to save a few bucks on some of the stuff that they really don't need. Fights in Walmart. Walmart is definitely the best place to watch these. People at Walmart are rather interesting, and for whatever reason, most of these incidents tend to happen at Walmart. I try to avoid the Black Friday scene as much as possible. I think I stood out with my mom in front of JCPenney one time, and I think that's the farthest I've ever gone with the Black Friday thing. But hopefully those of you who braved the crowds, the assaults, and everything else, hopefully you guys found something worth it. Obviously, getting gifts and everything is not exactly what Christmas is about. But I'm going to save all that for my Christmas episode. Yeah, one of the reasons I brought up Christmas was if you've been paying attention to the events of Congress, and they still have yet to pass a budget, which I hope that's not a surprise to any of my listeners, but I believe it was John Boehner who said that we're not staying any extra days. I think it's important we all go home and spend time with our families, which I can respect that. But on the other hand, this particular Congress has passed the fewest bills of any Congress ever. So you could dare say that they have been probably the least productive Congress in our history. Now, you can have a few different ideas on that. You could say, well, it's because there's such great conflict between the House and the Senate. A lot of bills just are not getting passed. You could look at it that way. You could also look at it as we're actually trying to stop the shenanigans that one side is trying to pull over the other. Not always succeeding, but obviously only a couple dozen bills have been passed. So not a lot of the garbage is passed in this Congress, even though unfortunately the Affordable Health Care bill passed, but that was the previous Congress. And we're still trying to deal with all the horrible legislation that is going through and the lack of progress in important fields. And one of the major things is the budget. With the military especially, this budget needing to get passed is very important for them. Partly because what was started a few years ago and has been pushed on the military has been what is called the sequestration. And because of that, the military has been downsizing significantly. By 2020, if things aren't significantly changed, we're going to be a good $1 trillion less of a military. Now, some of us may look at that, okay, well, that's significant spending that we're saving on military costs. Well, this is not exactly a good thing, and here's why I say that. If we were in a era of peace where we were not engaged in conflicts around the world on a regular basis, then I would say, okay, some cutbacks for a peacetime scenario might be appropriate. I said might be appropriate. The huge, massive cutbacks that are going on now are definitely not something that are appropriate. We have pretty much sunk trillions of dollars into welfare, Medicare, Medicaid, this affordable health care. We've sunk billions and billions of dollars into wasteful programs. Congress helped, appropriate money along with the White House for this website for Obamacare. They spent millions of dollars. And the important part of the website, which was supposed to deal with the money aspect between the insurance companies and the people signing up, isn't even built yet. So we spent millions of dollars on a website that doesn't work. It was given years to be produced into something that was appropriate for millions of Americans to look at, to manage their health care, and it's a failure. So we're throwing out all this money in all these other places, yet for some reason we have to make cutbacks. And I've done research, looked at the figures, and the military is bearing the brunt of over 50% of the cuts, yet the military is not even half of the budget problem. So why are we cutting the military? In my opinion, with all the engagements that we are involved with, we shouldn't be cutting them. We should be spending more money on them. Military members do a lot that civilians wouldn't want to do. The hours are long. You have little to no say in where you go, what you do. You may pick a career in the military for your particular job, but they could move you from one place to another. They could send you overseas where you're getting shot at. Not a lot of civilians are going to actually choose that line of work. Most people won't. But for whatever reason, we want to continue to send them to Afghanistan, continue to send them to Libya, to Syria, send our troops in, send our troops here, send our troops there. But we don't want to send them the money with good equipment to do the job. And I think that's pretty sad. Out of every country in the world and their military, we spend the most for our military members. Now, some of that is due our military is not the largest in the world. Hopefully that doesn't shock anybody, but it's not. The United States has for years developed the mentality that technology is the way to go. Other countries, such as China or Russia, they have more of a numbers game. It's all about how many, how much, not necessarily the most technologically advanced weapons, but it's all about numbers. We may produce one tank with highly sophisticated equipment, whereas smaller countries may produce 4 or 5, but they don't have all the technology crammed in it. Makes them cheaper. So if you cut their budgets a little bit by half, you're not losing everything that we are. When you cut the military budget down by $1 trillion in 10 years, several programs are going to pretty much be terminated, be mothballed, be postponed. The latest, from what I have been reading about the Joint Chiefs Staff, is that even for each branch, there's huge cutbacks in personnel, yet we have them deployed all over the world. So that pretty much spreads your lines thinner in order to meet the current budget constraints that have been in place since nothing new has passed. To change this, the Navy will have to cut back on the amount of fleets they use. Not all the carriers will be able to be in use. New programs for the Army with new weapon systems pretty much gone. The Air Force is going to have to cut flying hours and personnel. The Marines are going to have to make a huge drop in personnel, which affects the amount of time that their people have at home versus the amount of time they have to be deployed. Historically, they're usually deployed for about a year. They're gone from their families, their wives, their children. So you're spending more time away and less time at home because you're cutting the amount of people that can do the job. And to be honest, during especially Christmas time, this is not right. Flat up. How many congressmen and women would be willing to sacrifice some of their pay? Still quiet. I didn't see any hands raised. And nobody jumping up and down saying, hey, I'll sacrifice my pay for the military. No, it's not going to happen. And there are men and women overseas who aren't coming home for Christmas. They don't get to see their kids open their presents. They don't get to spend those nice romantic evenings with their wife over Christmas dinner. They don't get to see their mom or dad. But Congress gets to go home and spend time with their families without a budget being passed. Now, I don't know about you, but that kind of turns my stomach a little bit. Despite what you may think positive about the Congress, which probably most of you don't think much positive about them, they actually have the lowest approval rating of any Congress that we have ever had, apart from their lack of production. But it kind of turns my stomach that they declare they're going to go home when their work is not done. They can't pass a budget. President Obama hasn't signed a budget in years. And why not? Well, to be honest, they don't want to pass a budget. Because if you pass a budget, for those of you who run the finances of your home, a budget keeps you on track. How much you can spend for this, for food, for transportation, for your house payment, for your cars, everything. Well, the Congress will have something similar. This is how much we can spend for the military. This is how much we spend, for Medicare, Medicaid, how much we spend on unemployment benefits, how much we spend on this, on that. Well, if you don't pass a budget, you don't have those, quote, limited restraints. And under the current administration, we have been dumping well over $1 trillion every year into our debt. We have not had an even year since Obama took office. And he has continued to spend out of control, along with the Congress. You can't blame it all on the president, because the Congress hasn't gotten their act together and done their job. Yet, they're not going to work late. They refuse to work late to do their job, and they're going to go home and spend time with their families, while men and women are overseas with less capability to come home than they used to have. My brother, he was in the Army, and this kind of hits home. I've seen armored personnel deploying. They don't get the nice, comfortable, laid-back seats on a nice, comfortable aircraft, first-class service. And even if they did, it won't last long. They'll be sitting in a forward operating base, not wondering when their buddy will get his head blown off. Their Humvee will get attacked. So in my opinion, we should be spending more on the Department of Defense, the military. Because since we have relied on technology to make us the most powerful nation in the world, we need to keep that advantage by declaring to the world that we are not going to pass a budget, which the world can watch the news, anybody can see the turmoil in the United States and the lack of competence in our leadership. It doesn't display confidence from many of our allies. Our allies are already irritated with us. I don't know if you guys have had the opportunity to read the news article that I posted back in November, but the NSA was spying on our allies, several key members of NATO allies. So we want to send help, send aid to Libya, to Syria, who are not friends. They are not friends. But we are going to spy on our friends as if we don't trust them what they're doing. Now, the excuse that, was put out was, well, it's because, a guy who's your friend today may be your enemy tomorrow. Seriously? I don't see Great Britain suddenly turning on us and launching nukes our direction. I don't see that. NATO allies. Most of the countries in NATO have been friends for years. So that argument is a little shallow. But we're not instilling any confidence in our allies because we can't take care of business. We're not taking care of business. And you may say what you want about this second Gulf War, about Operation Enduring Freedom, the conflict in Afghanistan that's lasted over a decade. And you can have your opinions on it. I definitely do. Whether good or bad, whether we should be there, whether we shouldn't be there. My thing is this. We have failed to learn from our own mistakes, and we are committing the same mistakes as previous generations have done. Afghanistan, prime example of that. Back in the 70s, Russia, Cold War, decided they're going to move through there. Well, to help defend them, we armed, freedom fighters, that we call them, such as the Taliban. We trained them, gave them weapons, so they would help stop the Russians. Well, 20 or 30 years later, guess what happens? Well, all that training comes back. That weapon technology comes back. And now we're fighting them. And anyone who thought Afghanistan was going to be a quick operation didn't learn from the Russians. The Russians just finally pulled out. It was not worth it to them because they were losing tanks, personnel, and they realized it was a waste. They were not going to complete the objective on any kind of short term, and it'd be something they'd be drawn out for years. Something that they would be stuck, engaged in for years, and funnel millions and billions and trillions of dollars into a campaign that they couldn't afford. So what did we do? Did we learn from that? No, we didn't. We went in there with our great technology, figured it was going to carry us through the day, and not saying we haven't had successes. But technology hasn't solved all the problems, and it never will. And a few, we call them terrorists, from our point of view now, have been able to stop us. And we're only allowed to pursue them so far. We have restrictive rules of engagement that pretty much handicaps our military members. So we cut the money from them, which ends up cutting back the technology that we could use for them. So we're now putting them on a more even playing field with their adversaries. Well, the rest of the world's looking at us like we're pretty stupid. And to be honest, I really can't say I blame them. All honesty. I would agree with them. We have made too many errors in judgment by the leaders we have put into office. And it is something we definitely need to change come this next election cycle. About a third of the Senate should be coming up for re-election. And we need to remove the fools that we have kept in office for far too long. If they've been in for 1-2 decades, once you've been out of the real world for so long, you have lost touch. You do not see any longer what is actually going on back for those who actually have to work. Now, they may claim they do. They may claim they have the best intentions. They may claim that they're fighting for their districts, their respective constituency, but in all reality, they are very far removed. Now, the representatives, well, they're elected every 2 years. So, they're all coming around this cycle. And I know the House is predominantly Republican. Well, I can guarantee you there are several Republicans that are idiots. I'm not talking intellect, but I'm talking about in their decision-making process. They have made great errors for this country. Those errors need to be rectified. They need to be removed. You know, those of you who listen to the program know, I am for freedom. Maximum freedom. Meaning as little legislation as can possibly be to keep us free and safe should be there. Very limited government. And because of this, I'm not exactly in the Republican establishment's smiley face zone, if you want to call it that. They wouldn't like me. Oh, that's okay, I don't like them either. And those of you who do agree that freedom is the most important and that we are losing it need to weigh every single person that you vote for in this coming election. Whether it is your representative, your senator, a councilwoman, in your town, everybody you vote for, you need to hold up a standard of freedom versus government. And those that want more government control, more power, more restrictions, more laws, those are the kind of people you need to remove. You need to defeat. I know some of the people that will listen to this radio program probably won't agree with me on that. We need to compromise, even everything out. We need to make sure we win a majority in the House, a majority of the Senate. We need to win, and we need to push the moderates. Well, let me tell you, pushing moderation is a bad choice. And it has been proved in the last elections. We have pushed lame duck candidates at the forefront of our presidential run. And when anytime the news media really gets behind a candidate for president, that's almost an instant litmus test, for me anyway, of who probably not to pick. And the reason why I say that is because look what happened. The news media, the liberal media especially, was really pushing Romney in the last election. I told people, you do not want to vote for him. And the first question was, why? It's like, because he's going to lose. I'm like, oh no, he can't lose. He's for guns, he's for this, he's for that. And when I actually started looking at his record, he's a little shaky on most of that stuff. He's what you would call the moderate. Almost downright liberal in some things, but he's the middle of the road kind of guy. When you go up against somebody who, like President Obama, he was the first black president. That was his claim to fame. And you had to watch what you say or you'd instantly be labeled a racist. Which isn't right. I can disagree with you based on your policies, whether you are brown, black, yellow, green, purple, it doesn't matter. I don't like you based on your character, your policies, and that's how you judge somebody. It shouldn't be by the color of their skin. But they went through, and if you doubt me, research it. I can guarantee you, the liberals, the Democrats, they got together and they analyzed our field of candidates. Why did they like McCain in the first election against President Obama? He was the old white guy. And what they wanted was somebody that was completely different than the young black guy, the young black African American that was going to change the United States. to push us beyond racism. And that's what they promoted. That's what they said. And those of us who actually paid attention knew that President Obama was not exactly a good choice for the United States of America. But then we looked at presidential hopeful John McCain, and we shook our heads. He was not going to be the contrast difference. He believed in reaching across the aisle, in going along with the liberal Democrats on many items. Well, what happened? President Obama won, obviously. Well, they tried to do it again 4 years later with Governor Romney. And as I told people, you don't want to pick him because the news media was behind him. And the liberal Democrats got together. Who can we beat? Who is the easiest guy we can beat? Well, they didn't want to go against a woman candidate. And here's why. Because that would split the women vote. And they couldn't afford to lose the woman vote. So they analyzed it. So, well, we had the Republicans. They had presidential candidate Herman Cain. Now, there's those of you who actually followed the election would know that the news media went after him hard. And here's why. They believed that, for those of you who don't know, President Obama is only half black. And because of this, Herman Cain, being completely African American, or black, however you want to say it, he was based on more substance than President Obama. And he could, based on substance, beat Obama. Now, that would take any kind of race questions out of it. Because it wasn't oh yeah, if you don't support the first black president, then you're racist. Well, if both candidates are black, that question's gone. That issue is gone. You cannot throw the race card when your opponent's the same race as you are. And that is why they destroyed Herman Cain. They threw out allegations after allegations, and they just went after him so hard to destroy him. And he finally withdrew because of that. And it was really hard on his family. And that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't ever want to run for president. Ever. Is because of that right there. The news media, the liberals who are scared of you, will destroy you. And it's not necessarily anything that has to be true. Just the allegation itself can be damaging enough. There was also Ron Paul, presidential candidate. And he ran. He was completely different from Romney. Completely different than President Obama. But the news media worked overtime. The liberal Democrats worked overtime to marginalize him as a wacko, a completely off-the-wall right-winger. That is what they labeled him as. And even some of the other people he went against marginalized him. Here's the problem. He didn't make it. But he fought all the way through the entire election based on his principles. And, what the news media will try to do in the major elections around the United States, coming up in 2014, 2016, is they will try to ordain their next leader. Or if you want to be blunt, call him a king. Your sovereign, your emperor, whatever you want to call them, because that is what you're pretty much doing. You're not letting the process work itself through, which is something Ron Paul understood. The election goes through for several states. The primaries. The first 20 states have voted. Well, what happens? You got the other 30 states. They haven't voted yet. But the news media will, well, this person's the front runner. This person's the guy we need to pick, the guy we need to get behind. He's the one. And they'll destroy the rest of the competition until there is the one. Well, by the time it gets down to the other states in their primaries, okay, do I vote Romney or do I vote nobody else? Because there's nobody else left. And that is the problem. A lot of Americans, I'm hoping my audience is different from that, but a lot of Americans will sit there and watch the news, listen to it on the radio. They will read it on the internet, and they get filtered the liberal garbage that comes up, and that's all they hear. Well, and then they start believing it. And then when they start talking anything about what they may believe in, no matter what light it's in, say the presidential candidate, okay, well that interests me, I need to know who I'm voting for. Well, if they keep pushing one guy is better than the other, and that's all you see, all you hear, some Americans just go along with it. They don't do the research. They don't look things up. And that's something I try to instill to you, my audience, is to make sure you do the research. Don't always take my word for it. Look it up. Because anybody can tell you anything. I can tell you the sky is green and the grass is blue. It was just named wrong when you were a child, and you're just confused. Am I right? No, I'm not right. But you tell people the lie long enough, and it becomes true to them. And that's all they know. Then they teach that lie as if it's true. And then before long, there was nobody that ever understood the truth because it was never taught, because all you heard was the lies, and that is what you believed. And that is something that needs to change. And this whole budget and appropriations for the military. The liberals are not exactly high on the I love military list. There's been, with the sequestration, a budget's not passing, there have been times when the military might not get paid. The civilians work with the military, contracting jobs, everything associated with the DoD. There were times they didn't get paid. Reservists were not going to get paid. So you're telling these people that they have to go to war to take bullets, yet their family is back home, and they don't know if they're going to get fed. They don't even know if the money's going to hit the bank account. Are you serious? That's not the country I was born in. And that's not the country I love. The country I love respects the military, who makes sure they get paid. They're the ones taking the bullets for us. Why shouldn't we make sure they're taken care of? Another thing with the military is the whole healthcare. And I might have an extreme view on this, but if you serve the military for any length of time and are honorably discharged, you should have medical benefits for the rest of your life. Not everyone can say that they served in the Air Force, in the Army, in the Marines, in the Navy, in the Coast Guard, in the National Guard, the reserves. They can't say that. I mean, you may walk up to 10 people, one of them might be, or might have served, but these people need to be taken care of. They are taking the risks. Especially those that are going through the entire 20-year process. They have a decent retirement, but they had to have gone through years and years. Some of them might have seen their family less than they were gone. And these people need to be taken care of. Done my research, and what they've tried to do is raise the healthcare costs of veterans, which I am absolutely opposed to. They push this whole Obamacare. It's supposed to be better health care. It's supposed to be more affordable. But they were, at the same time, they were pushing this, and they were going to vote on this. They were pushing to raise the cost of the health care of veterans. So what does it come down to? What is the real, true reason of this affordable health care? Well, the health care of the United States is pretty much 1/6 of the economy. What does the government want? What do the people in power want? What do people in power normally want? More freedom for everybody, right? Wrong. That's not what they want. What they want is more power. What better way to have a massive power grab than to declare to everyone that healthcare is going to be cheaper and better for everybody, and that if you want to keep your healthcare, you won't lose your doctor, and you can keep it if you want. Yeah, right. What happened? More people have lost it than have signed up. That didn't help anybody. All it was control of 1/6 of the U.S. economy. It was the power grab. It has nothing to do with them caring about you. Don't for 1 minute think that 99% of the people in power care a hair's breadth about what happens to you. When you finally understand that, things might start changing in your brain. Might start changing the way you think. Because bottom line, all you are is a vote for them. That's all they care about. Keep the power, keep the money in their pocket going. And some of them, they may say, we need to raise taxes so we can give to the poor who can't afford health care, who are unemployed for so many months. We need to extend the extended unemployment. We need to extend that. Okay, well, you can extend it. Take some of your pay and help supplement those who are unemployed that can't find a job. You do that. Well, we can't really do that. We need your money to do it. No, you really don't. If you really cared, you would make some of the sacrifices. Some of those who are in Congress don't even give 10% of their entire earnings, and some of them earn thousands and thousands of dollars. I read of one congresswoman who didn't even give 1% of her paycheck to a charity. Her tax forms were released, and she didn't even bother to give 1%. Not even 1%. Yet this is the same kind of individual that wants to take your money and give it to who they want to. The millions of dollars we wasted on a website, that money was all wasted, but that money came from you. I'd be really irritated. I am really irritated. The money I gave to the government, they spent it, and there is nothing showing for it. If I spent money for this website, it should work, and it should work every time. I paid money for the website that you're listening to this on. It works. It's up and running. And I can guarantee you I didn't pay even $1 million for it. So, where did that money go? Was it wasted? Did it line somebody's pocket? Interesting questions. Did it? So, when it comes down to Congress, they need to do their job, plain and simple. And no offense to the families of those who serve in Congress. This is not directed at you. But if your husband or wife, who has been serving in the Senate or the House, hasn't been doing his job, missing one Christmas with you guys isn't as bad as what many military members miss on a normal basis. They not only miss Christmas, they miss birthdays, anniversaries, Could you sacrifice one Christmas? Maybe one New Year's if they're that slow? Could you sacrifice one so that they could pass a budget for our military? Would that be that hard? Even if you didn't want to do that, let's say, no, I really want to spend time with my spouse. Well, how about you go to Washington and spend the time with them there? There's plenty of monuments to look at, Christmas lights out. You can spend a holiday in Washington, D.C. Go for it. Will this happen? Probably not. I would be shocked if this ever happened. Especially from many people who think it's better to spend somebody else's money than their own for others. But it's an idea, not as if it'll ever happen. But those are the kind of people who would sacrifice that, who would put themselves out there. Those are the kind of people you want to keep, not the people who are more concerned about themselves. So my encouragement to you is make sure you're keeping track on what your representative and what your senator's doing. And in 11 months, if they're not up to par, remove them. Tell your friends to help remove them. Go around town, remove them. And maybe this country will turn back to where it was. Back to the great country, the one where we had the respect of the world. Bowing to foreign dignitaries is not a sign of respect. It is a sign of submission. We are the greatest country that has ever been. We need to act like it. We need to be responsible. And those that are in power need to share that same responsibility and that same urgency in everything they do. And if they have to make sacrifices, they're the ones that wanted to get elected. They should be willing to do so. And that's all I have time for, folks. Thank you for listening to the program. I know it was a little long one. Good to be back with you guys. Again, if you have any questions or comments, something you'd like me to talk about on the radio show, you can always shoot me an email at miked@erttradio.com. Also, for those of you who have checked out the website, there is the tab of Stack of Stuff. There are articles that are posted every 2 weeks by Don Dipple Sr., and I would encourage you to check those out. He is part of ERTT Radio, and he does do some good articles. He has a good piece on what firearms to select if you are a first-time firearm buyer, and I would definitely encourage you to check out December 8th issue of the Pensacola Courant. And if I don't get a chance to talk to you, definitely have a Merry Christmas, and as always, live free and die free.